Welcome back to the Always Reading Book Club. It is your girl Kiki Reader, and we have a new series. We are going to dive into the Devil's Kisses series by Gemma James. The first book in this series is called The Devil's Kiss. The book starts out with Kayla Sutton, and she is being brought into her boss's office, Gage Channing. So he asked her, do you know why you're here? And she's like, no, I don't know. Well, apparently, old girl has embezzled $10,000 from the company. She's been siphoning it off a little bit at a time. She stole the money because her daughter is gravely ill. She has leukemia. The insurance won't pay for the experimental treatment, which is what is keeping her alive. So she, of course, begs him not to turn her in. She says, I'll pay you back every penny. Just please don't turn me in. But Gage has other plans. And so he has drawn up a proposal for her to be his slave for 6 weeks. Now, I am not going to call her a slave because I don't want to do that. So I will just say submissive because it's kind of the same. I think maybe the slave one is a little darker. So we're just going to say submissive for 6 weeks. So during these 6 weeks, Monday through Friday, she's going to go home. She'll be with her daughter at the hospital. But then on the weekends, she will totally be with Gage at his home. So the offer is that for these 6 weeks, he will destroy the evidence, and if she doesn't, he's going to turn everything over to the police. So at first she was like, no, because the $10,000 isn't enough to cover all of her medical bills. So then, of course, he was like, well, I'll pay all of her medical bills. So, that's going to seal the deal. So she signed the contract. She's pissed off. She's got tears in her eyes. He tells her to go to this specific spa that he apparently sends his women. So they are waxed and everything the way he likes them. But he doesn't want her fully waxed because she's a redhead. He likes that. And he wants, to see some hair down there as well. So she goes to the spa, goes through that. And then he tells her, I want you on my doorstep in 2 hours in a trench coat. So she leaves the spa. She goes to see her daughter at the hospital. While she's there, she does hear a familiar voice. It's someone she knew back in college named Ian. And he's now a doctor at this hospital. The last time she talked to him was like 7 years ago. So her daughter Eve, she's 3 years old, and she did ask him, can you kind of look after her because I do have to go away on a business trip. So he gave his number, and he was like, sure. She gets to Gage's house, and he's like, you're late. And she was like, I had to say goodbye, to my freaking kid, and he doesn't give her a tour. He just takes her straight to the basement, which is like the red room for all of us 50 Shades of Grey fans. So he tells her that she will call him master when they're alone, and that she will also be punished as she has already made 2 infractions. Okay, so here's my issue with that. You haven't taught her anything. Maybe, yeah, she should have researched, but those type of relationships, you got to be able to set boundaries and certain things and know what people are comfortable with. And there was no conversation about this. And then it's like she's breaking rules, and it's like, I don't even know it's a rule. You know what I mean? So that right there that's a problem right there in itself. So then he asked her to give a safe word, and she was like, for what? If I use it, you're going to turn me in. And so finally she gives him the name Rick. He wants to know who that is, and she says it's her ex-husband that she doesn't like to speak of. So then he takes a knife, and she starts to freak out a little bit, and he was like, I'm not going to hurt you. He was just going to take the knife to take off her bra and panties. He starts fingering her pussy, and he's like, oh my gosh, you're so tight. And then he sees the scars on her stomach, and they look like, it's from a knife. So clearly, we're going to have a story there. So then he tells her why he's fingering her, how he sees her stealing glances at him while they're at work, because she is his personal assistant. So he brings her to the point of almost coming, and then he stops. and tells her she can't come unless he tells her to. So he leaves her tied up for like an hour. And yes, he tells her that the room has cameras in it. So he comes back to the room. Old girl was about to fall out. He undid the bar and she almost hit the floor. Her eyes were closed and she was drooling. And he was like, open your eyes. She did. And then she told him, fuck you, Gage. So then he took her to the bench. He punished her with the whip. After that, he bent her over the bed and started rubbing her clit again. And then he starts talking to her and was like, you have no idea how many times I've had to jack off in my office after watching you in your skirts. So she started getting wet, and then she says, just get it over with. And he was like, no, this is my time. You aren't going to rush me. So he takes the condom, pulls it out, puts it on, plunges into her. It feels amazing to her. She moans, oh, master. And he was like, you can't come unless I tell you. So she thought about the day she left Rick, because she couldn't come. So you got to think about something to get your mind off of it. So she thinks about the day she left Rick. And it was the day he had beaten her in like a drunken stupor. And he had thrown Eve, the baby, in the corner, and that had broken the child's arm. And then he had cut up Kayla's stomach as she tried to leave. And that made the orgasm stop. He was all like, you have such control. Then he said that he suspects she feels force and she just unleashed on him. And she was like, you are forcing me. And the only way I was able to not come is because I thought about Rick and how he cut up my stomach. And when I tried to leave, all the things he did to me. And he was just like, it is your fault because you stole my money. And she was like, but you're worse. And he was like, basically, you'll just take some time to break. That was his response. So the next morning he comes to get her. He brings her breakfast, but she has to be punished for her outburst the night before. So he pours rice on the floor, makes her get on her knees in the rice. That sounds so painful. So then he gives her some yogurt. She sits there in the chair. He asks her some questions, tells her, he needs her to tell the truth. He asks her if she has ever had anal sex. She says once, and it was because she was forced by her ex-husband. So his eyes grow extremely angry, and then he asks her, how many men she's been with, and she says, including you 3. So he explained to her that, he's had many women, but that he's pretty much always wanted her. So then he asks her, was there, like, who was the other guy? And she told him that, it was, why? Why do you want to know? And he was just like, I just want to, like, are you still in love with him? And she's like, that's none of your business. So then he yelled at her. He's like, it is my business. And so he punished her with a literal ass whooping right there, 50 licks on the ass. And then he asked her again. So she answers yes. And he wanted to know why she still had this love for him. And she was like, I don't know. It's been 7 years. I don't know why I'm holding on. So she then asked him about calling to check on Eve. And he says no. He tells her they will discuss phone privileges once she gets her mouth under control. So dinner went much better. She didn't have any outbursts. He took her to the basement, and she started freaking out because he started taking her towards the bench. And she thought, oh my gosh, she's going to get punished again. So he was like, get a grip. You didn't do anything to be punished. And she's just like, no, bastard. Like, he's like, you're not going to be punished, because she was freaking out. So then he has an anal plug that he's going to put in her. And at first, of course, it's tight to her. It's a little snug. And she was kind of like, oh my gosh. Because it's like flashbacks of like the horror she had with her ex-husband. So he tells her to relax. He puts lube on her and everything like that to help her. She eventually was able to relax. He gets it in. Then he starts fucking her pussy. And old girl has the most intense orgasm that she's ever had before. So he gives her chores to do that she's got to complete. This is next day. She's got to clean bathrooms, the bedrooms, basement, kitchen, everything. And she has to do all this with the butt plug in her ass. So he would come around different times and he'd pull it in and out while she was cleaning. And it was upsetting to her because it was turning her on. And she's like, how is this turning me on? So he took her in the bathroom and he took out the butt plug and then gently pushed into her with his dick. And she freaked out at first. But as she listened to him and he kind of, coached her through it, relax your muscles, it won't. He took her to the basement and then he kept bringing her to the edge, but he wouldn't let her come. And then he had tied up her arms to the headboard, and then he came and then he left her there for an hour, and he told her that was her punishment for having an orgasm, because I think she had one in the bathroom. They go to dinner. It felt nice for her to kind of wear clothes because he had her naked the whole time. The whole time. So they were at dinner and he asked her, if she's going to see Eve that evening because this is Sunday, so this is the end of the weekend. She says yes. I know she's missing me. The waiter comes up. He's looking at Kayla with googly eyes. So when the waiter left, he was pissed. Gage was, and he tells Kayla, I will order your food when the waiter gets back and you don't look at him. So he, of course, gave the waiter this furious look, terrified the poor boy. They get back to the house. She strips and gets on her knees. He lifts her up, fucks her hard quick. Before she leaves, he gives her a notebook, a journal, that he wants her to write everything in. He wants her to tell him about her day, what she ate, who she talked to. He then gives her this mind-blowing kiss and then tells her, don't forget you belong to me. I don't take too kindly to other men wanting what's mine. Now, here's my thing about that. That's not her fucking fault, okay? If I'm breathing, it's not my fault if someone likes me. You can't get mad at me about that. I'm come on, dude. You're getting mad at this girl for something that she has no control over. That's kind of crazy. So then they go to the hospital. Well, she goes to the hospital. Let me say that correctly. She goes to the hospital. She stays with Eve long after Eve is falling asleep. She goes home. And, of course, she can't get Gage out of her head, so she made herself come to the thought of him. And she even dreamed about him, but, of course, he was a much nicer version. So then she follows his hygiene regimen. Yeah, he has everything set for her. And she saw that one of the rules was not to masturbate. And she's like, oops, already broke a rule. He wanted her to wear short skirts, wear 4-inch heels everywhere. She wasn't to speak with, any guys unless it was for work or hospital staff, which technically, I'm just saying, Ian fell into it. So she goes to work. She's nervous because she doesn't know how they're going to be at work, right? She doesn't know how this energy is going to work. So she goes into the office and he just spews off requests as normal. He's being normal with her. And she doesn't say anything because she's just kind of oh my gosh, it kind of stung her. But at the same time, it was confusing, So she leaves his office and a coworker, a guy named Tom, comes up to her and he's like, how was your weekend? She's like, oh, same old, same old. And then she asked, how was his? And he said, oh, I broke up with my girlfriend. So Kayla was like, oh, I'm so sorry to hear that. And the Tom guy was like, oh, no, it was a long time coming. So then he asked out Kayla for coffee. So Kayla was like, Eve's in the hospital and that's really all I can focus on. And then he gets all up in her space because he wasn't taking the clues, So Eve looks over at Gage's office. Dude is fuming. He bolts out of the office. He tells Tom, you're fired for sexually harassing an employee. And calls for security to walk the guy out. So Kayla yells at him, was that really necessary? And so he tells Kayla, my office now. So she goes in the office, and when they close the door, she says immediately, I'm sorry for yelling at you. And he was like, how dare you speak to me like that in front of the other employees? She apologizes again, but he's still pissed. So he took his belt off. He gave her about 10 licks, and then he made her suck him off. He came in her mouth, and when they were done, he told her, clean up, I'm already late for a meeting. So she cleans herself up, she goes to her desk, and then she starts hearing like comments from other employees about like being like a slut, and she's hearing the word blowjobs. So then she takes out of the office, she calls Gage, she goes off on him, like, who did you tell, And he tells her, I haven't said anything to anybody. And you're to call me master when it's just you and me. And he told her she better be at his place at 9 p.m. that night. And I'm like, geez, that's my thing with these rules. It's like she's only supposed to see me on the weekend. But if he decides he wants to see her during the week, she's got to go. That's crazy. She goes to the hospital after work. She gets horrible news. Apparently the treatment, it's not working anymore. And her daughter had a nosebleed that day, which apparently is like really bad for kids with leukemia. And the doctor tells her there's another new clinical trial that we could try, and we can put her in, put her on the list, if you want to, but I guess it still costs a lot. So Kayla told her, don't worry about the money, I'll get it. Just get her on that list. So the doctor told her the only way we can do it at this point, if we're not able to get her in that trial, is to just keep her comfortable. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's just got to be heartbreaking to hear about your kid. Just, oh my gosh. So then Ian comes in and asks, what's wrong? She tells him, and he's like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. What do you need? And she's like, I can't. And she's like, why now? Like, it's been 7 years. And he said, you pushed me away and you cut off all communication. And he then tells her that he came back for her. So she just tells him, I can't. And she goes to her daughter, and he tells her, I missed you. And she says, I miss you too. And then she leaves the room. So then she goes to Gage. It's late, but when he opens the door and he sees her, like, tear stained, she's just a mess. And he's like, what's wrong? And she tells him, and he was like, I told you I would take care of her medical bills. And she's like, yeah, but this is like more expensive. This is beyond just, the regular medical needs. And he said, I'll drop a check off tomorrow. And he said, I want your complete submission. And he also wants to make sure that, she's eating, because she says she hadn't really eaten that day. Too much going on. So he asked her, what's your least favorite dish? And she said fish. So he said, okay, every night this week for dinner, you're going to eat fish. And that way you'll remember to eat. So then he takes her down to the basement. And he also wants to take away her safe word. Ooh, Lord. So she agrees, and he told her he would have the new contracts drawn up. So he ties her up, spread eagle, blindfolds her, puts clamps on her breast, starts licking her clit, taking her to the edge, but not letting her come. And she told him earlier, because he had asked her, like, if she had broken any rules, and she admitted, she said, I made myself come. And he told her he's going to deny her tonight as well. So he told her there has to be complete trust. So she told him about Ian. And I feel like he had to know about him to keep trying to push that thing. I need complete trust. It's like you got to already know something, and you're waiting for me to tell you. So she just told him about Ian. He told her, you stay away from him, and I'll take care of the room at the office. I'm sure I know exactly where it comes from. Next day, she goes in to work. She goes to his office. She hears a moan, and the door opens, and Catherine brushes past her. And Kayla's pissed, and she's shocked. So Gage still has his shirt untucked. So Kayla asked him, am I not pleasing you, master? And he says, why would you think that? And she said, because you just had Catherine do what I did to you yesterday. And he was like, Catherine was in here because I was firing her, and because of what she pulled yesterday, I figured it was the least she could do but be on her knees. Here's my thing. Bitch, if we doing this type of a, I'm going to say sub-master type of a relationship, you want my complete fidelity? Bitch, I better have yours. Like, I don't like that. You could have found another way to, like, get back at Catherine for starting the rumor. She don't need to suck your dick. Like, come on. I don't like that. So he basically tells her, there's a Christmas party coming up on Friday. They're going to go together. Everyone's going to know that they're together. He was like, you'll be able to go visit your daughter on Friday. The party's after that. And he says, I'll also let you call her on Saturday. He was like, I only have a certain amount of time with you, and I don't want to waste it. He also tells her, you need to get Ian out of your life. So the week goes by. She doesn't see Ian that much. When she does see him, she tells him to stay away. And, just give me a few weeks. Right? And he gets mad, but she's like, just give me a few weeks. And to me, like, clearly she's got something going on. Allow her the time to work it out. Just because you pop back don't mean I want you. You know what I mean? Give me some time to work out whatever I got going on. He, of course, just didn't really want to accept the no. But he's all like, if you have someone, just tell me. And she goes, no, I don't. He gets pissed. He storms out. And he says, just don't let another 7 years go by. So then she gets to Gage's house, and he has her take a lie detector test. And the questions are pretty much, has she lied to her master? Did she make herself come? Has she allowed another man to touch her? She passed the test. She answered everything honest. She goes downstairs to Gage in the basement. He has her undress him and then suck him off. And then he bends her over and puts in another anal plug and puts clamps on her breast. And he tells her he just basically wants her in so much pain and full that she begs for him to fill every hole when they get back from the party. I said, well, damn. So she sees a cocktail dress laid out on the bed. And then she hears a few minutes later on the phone, because she went up the stairs a little bit, and she heard where he was saying, you don't know who you're messing with. So clearly somebody's probably trying to blackmail him. So they have a nice time at the party. She sees an old friend of hers named Jody. Jody helped her get the job there. And she was in awe that Kayla was with Gage. And then she even told her that she had fucked him years ago. Now, first of all, bitch, if you know I'm with the guy, I don't really talk to you that much anymore, right? You know I'm with the guy now. Explain to me the purpose and telling me you fucked him. I don't get that. That's just like, oh my gosh. So she even said, like, she knew about his whole, how he's into kink. So then her boyfriend Rob called her and was like, she tells her, we should get together soon. And Kayla's like, yeah, we should do that. So then the butt plug starts to vibrate because Gage had turned it on while they were at the table. So he's got a remote to it. They're sitting at the table. And then, of course, good old Gage is going to, put his hand over there, and he's going to start rubbing on her clit underneath the table. So she got so overwhelmed because he's rubbing her clit and the anal plug is vibrating. Okay. Yeah, that's a lot. So she winds up having to get up because the lady in front of her was like, sweetie, are you okay? You look a little... She's like, I'll be right... I have to go to the restroom. I'll be back. So she bolts. She goes to the bathroom. And then Gage follows her a few minutes later. They go back to the table. He starts rubbing on her clit again. So then they get up. They dance. Kayla was tipsy. She had like 4 glasses of champagne. But she was having a great time. She was really enjoying herself. So then they leave. They go back to his place. He's kissing her. He takes her to the bedroom. He takes her to the bedroom this time instead of the basement, which is a big deal. So then he takes the clamps off and he asks her, do you hate me? And she said, a part of me does. And he keeps rubbing on her and tells her to tell him what she wants. And she's like, I want your mouth all over my body. I want you inside me. And he says to her, promise you'll never leave me. And she says, I promise. But it was just to let... The girl just wanted to come. So at that point, she'd say anything. And so, of course, he lets her come. It's this earth-shattering orgasm, and she screams out Gage's name. So they wake up the next morning. He brings her some headache medicine, some orange juice. He tells her last night was just amazing, but she has to be punished for calling him Gage, because remember, she's only supposed to call him master when it's just the two of them. So then he gives her a few licks, but it isn't too bad. He was taking it easy on her. So then she looks at him and she was like, why do you do that? And he's like, do what? And she says, you just kind of shut down like all of a sudden. So then he gets pissed and he punishes her again and tells her that he's a twisted son of a bitch and stop analyzing him, and then he leaves. So he finally comes back and she's on her knees, and then he told her to go and do her chores. He puts the nipple clamps on her first, and then she's got to go clean. So then later that night, he takes her to the basement. He fucks her anally and makes her come like 3 times. So she feels so confused as she leaves because she can't figure out why she likes this twisted shit. She doesn't understand why this is turning her on, why this is so addicting to her. She can't understand it. So she thinks she's definitely going to need a good therapist after being with Gage. So she leaves from Gage's on Sunday, goes to the hospital. When she gets home, Ian's there. And she told him, "You can't be here. You got to go." And Ian apparently had been trying to call her all weekend to no avail because, she's not going to have her phone. She's not going to have anything because that is Gage's time. So he told her that Rick had come by to see Eve. That made her blood go cold because apparently there's a restraining order. He's not supposed to be near either one of them. And he had violated it like a year ago, and she thought he hadn't done anything since, so she thought she was safe. So then Ian wanted answers, and then he just like kisses her, which she stopped, but then she kisses him back, and then she stops it again. And he's like, because he was getting, really excited, and he tells her, "I never forced you to do anything." Then she just kind of fell asleep in his arms, and she just kind of cried because it's just been a lot going on with the old girl. She goes to work the next day. She's clearly nervous. She tells him, "I have something to tell you," and he looks pissed. And then he tells her that she had left her journal that he had bought for her, and he had taken it to her home. So he saw Ian. Ooh! Kayla was like, "Oh my gosh, you saw." And he was like, "Did you have sex with him?" And she's like, "No." And he asked, "Did you want to?" And she said, "Yes." And he tells her, "Come to my place after work." Like, shit. So she goes to see her daughter and then comes to his place. She drops to the floor, begs him, "Please forgive me, please forgive me." And then she sees Ian. So Gage has brought Ian, and he has also brought Catherine, and he is going to make Ian watch her get fucked by him while Catherine is going to suck and fuck Ian. Talk about a twisted fucking scene. Oh my gosh, that is crazy that this girl has to watch this. That's crazy. But Caleb screams out Ian's name when she comes. And I'm like, fuck. He gonna get her bad. Gage is gonna get her. So Kayla got a bad punishment. And it gets to the point to where she screams out Rick's name. Remember, she doesn't have a safe word anymore. But it was so bad, she screamed out Rick's name. And Gage immediately just stops. And then he just falls to the floor. And she just leaves. She doesn't even look back at him. So she gets to her house. And she's so depleted. She's so tired. And Ian's there. And she's like, "You shouldn't be here. This is what the hell got us in trouble the first time." And he's like, "I'm so sorry. I didn't know. I didn't understand, what was going on, da-da-da-da." So he was like, "I just wanted to make sure you were okay." She says, "I'm fine." And apparently, Ian has hired a private investigator to look into Rick. And apparently there have been some large deposits from Channing Enterprises into Rick's bank account. And also the PI thinks Gage has been embezzling from his clients for years. So it's like, why? She's confused because she's like, he doesn't need the money. Why would he do that? And she says, well, either way, now I have some cards. I'm not completely at his mercy. She's got some information. So she goes to see Gage the next day, goes to the house. He opens the door. Place is completely trash. It's dark. She finally finds him. He's still in the same clothes from the night from yesterday. He's drinking rum. He's like, "Why are you here? You need to leave." She throws the pack of evidence towards him and says, "I have enough in there to put you away. Isn't that funny that you wanted to blackmail me for embezzling and you've been doing it the whole time?" And she was like, I'd find it funny except for Eve, you know? So then he says, what do you want? And she says to call it a truce. The contract ends, you pay for her medical bills, and that's it. And we'll just call it even. So he says, fine. And she was like, that's all you got to say? And he was like, what do you want me to say? And she takes her clothes off and she like shows the bruises from what he did from that awful punishment. And he like can't look at her. And he's like, I'm sorry. I fucked up. I'm sorry. You know, what do you want me to say? You know? And he's like, I'll do it until you gouge my eyes out. You know, I'm sorry for what I did. So then he starts kissing her. And then, of course, she kind of melts into him. And then she pulls away. He tells her, you got to go home. He was like, because honestly, he's like, no amount of begging and pleading will stop me from fucking you right now. I was like, shit. So then she tears off her collar because she also had I don't think I mentioned that earlier. She does have a collar that she wears, which that is something very, that happens with submissives and doms. So she tears off her collar, she throws it on the ground, and tells him make the right decision. So she goes to a bar. She gets drunk, makes out with some random guy to see if maybe he can spark a fire in her. He doesn't. Of course, she's got him riled up. He doesn't want to stop, so she's got to kick him in the groin to make him stop. She runs outside. She calls Ian. He comes, gets her in like 20 minutes. She wants to go to his place, but he takes her home to hers. And she tells him that she went to go see him, and he doesn't say anything. And so Ian asks, did he hurt you? And she said, no, but we kissed. Ian gets upset. Grip on the wheel gets a little tighter. So he takes her home, and he's about to leave. And she's like, no, I don't want you to leave. I want you to stay. Just hold me. I want to wake up with you tomorrow. And so that's what they do. So she wakes up with Ian. They kiss, but they don't take it any further because she kind of knows if she does it now, the real reason she's doing it is because she's pissed off with Gage and what has happened. It's not because of how she feels about Ian. So she doesn't want to taint what she has with Ian. So she gets a phone call from Gage saying come to the office. So she goes to the office. She marches into Gage's office. She tells him she was going to put in her resignation because she can't work with Catherine. Because remember, he had fired her. But apparently he's made a deal with Catherine. And I'm thinking it had to involve that whole suck and fuck Ian thing. If you do this, I'll give you your job back. So he can't fire Catherine. So then he wants to renegotiate. And she's like, renegotiate? You don't have any cards left. And he's like, oh, yeah, I do. He says, if you turn me in, you're going to turn in your friend Jody, because that's why she resigned. So apparently old Jody was embezzling money too. So then he asks for one more weekend to void the contract, and then she'll be free and clear. She agrees. So she finds out that Jody and Rick are actually together. So the Rob guy was just a front. That's not her boyfriend. Jody is actually with Rick. And she catches them because she's going to see Jody, and Rick and Jody are locked in an embrace, kissing. So Rick has a brand new BMW, which clearly came from the extortion money. So she goes up to see Jody. Of course, she's looking all shocked, and she's like, I didn't mean for you to find out about us like this. And then Jody goes on this whole thing about how, she knows that she's had a hard time with the postpartum, and she's glad she finally got the help that she needed. And Kayla just kind of looking at her like, what the hell are you talking about? And, it's the lies that Rick has fed her. And so Jody's like, he wouldn't lie to me. He loves me. So clearly, old girl is gone, and there's no point in ever trying to pull her back, right? So apparently there's proof of the embezzlement. She tells Jody about it. Jody's like, that's a lie. Before she leaves, she tells her, you need to be careful because that Rick that he's gonna change. And when she gets into her car, Ian calls her and she tells him, give me time. He's like, why do you keep pushing me away? And she said, I just need time. And we also, oh, back to the thing with Jody and Rick. We also find out that Jody and Rick were fucking before she ever left him. So while she was like friends with the bitch, this bitch was fucking her husband. I'm like, jeez, I can't feel sorry for you then. I don't care what you go through. If you gonna do that, I could care less what you go through. So then Kayla gets some great news. She's gonna be able to bring home Eve in 2 weeks. So she's like super happy. And then Gage comes in the room. He has all these freaking gifts. So he gives them to Eve, because this is around Christmas time. And Eve has the biggest smile ever on her face. And Gage looks genuinely happy. It freaks Kayla out. And it pisses her off at the same time. Because she's like, you know, whatever we got going on, fine. But don't be trying to use my daughter. And he drags her outside and he's like, why would you think I would do that? And he's like, I would never hurt her. And she was like, well, you hurt me. And he's like, if I could take it back, I would. And she's like, why did you do it? Before he can answer, Ian walks up. He's like, you get your hands off of her. And of course, Gage is like, he's calm and he's collected because you know what? He knows he's going to have Kayla this weekend. And so he makes the comment to Kayla, make sure you wear something sexy for me. So Ian is like, I know you are not going to do that. She says he'll let me out of the contract if I give him one more weekend. And Ian realizes he's not going to be able to talk her out of it, but he's still pissed off. So he takes her on a jet, Gage does, for this weekend. He takes her to Vegas. He told her it was a short trip, so that way if she needed to get back, he could bring her back on a PJ. If anything happened with Eve, he could get her back quickly. And she, of course, she's shocked, you know, and now he wants to talk on their way to Vegas. So then he asks her, you know, why did you marry that man? And she says, because I was young, pregnant, and I thought it was the right thing to do. And he said, was he abusive to you before you all got married? And she said, no. He was like possessive, a little aggressive, but he had never, hit her. And so then she asked about if he's ever been in love with anyone, and he said no, but he said it like too quick, so she knew he was lying. So then she pressed him, and finally he admitted that he did, there was a woman that he loved, and she was the kind that she liked being hit. So she was really into this time that he likes, and she's thinking, wow, that was like the perfect person for you. So then she says, well, what happened to her? And he's like, she died. So then he says, I told you to drop it. So then finally she left it alone. So they get to Vegas, they get upstairs, and he tells her, he's going to punish her. And I'm like, well, damn, what did she do now? Well, probably because when she came to the house, I don't know, it's so many rules. She broke something. So he's like, he's not going to give her anything, but he gives her this vibrator to put between her legs. And then he gives her this really weak punishment. And I think it's because he knew he went too hard the last time. And so he's not really trying to do that, And so she comes pretty hard with it anyway. Because when he does that to her, it's like her mind. In another book we read, I think it was M. Brown's series, there's a space that they go to, I think it's called subspace or something like that, where it's this pure calmness that they get, and it's this euphoric feeling. So she's kind of come to love that feeling. To each his own. So they spend the next day at the casino. He lost a lot of money, but he gained a good amount of it back. There, of course, was this guy. He was a little too friendly with Kayla. And the guy went to give Kayla a high five. Gage got pissed and took the guy's hand and bended it. And I was like, oh my gosh, this man. And of course, the people, because he's a high roller, so they're like, Mr. Channing, is there a problem? And he's like, yeah, this guy's trying to be a little too, sweet to my date. So they escort the man out. And she gets upset because when that happens, guess what? Everyone looks at her. And she's like, I ain't doing shit, but then everything is on me, and she doesn't like everyone's eyes on her. So it pisses her off, and so she runs off. She gets to the elevator. He's right behind her. They get to the room, and she just tells him, listen, whatever you think you're going to do, in other words, whatever punishment you think you're about to do, no, it's not happening. And so he didn't do anything, but he says, he was just like, I don't want to punish you. He's like, I just want to kiss the fuck out of you. So he does that, and then, of course, they have this intense fuck session. So then, now, guess what? That was the last weekend. Contract's over. He has now transferred her to a different department on another floor. He hasn't talked to her in 2 weeks. She's going a little stir crazy. She misses him. She finds herself on his doorstep. He's like, why are you here? She says, I don't know. They have a whole debacle in the basement. She leaves the next morning to go get Eve, and she's because Eve's coming home today. She's super excited. When she gets to her room, Ian's there, and he's watching cartoons with Eve. And so he asks to speak with Kayla alone. They go to his office. He tells her that he has wanted to do this for a while and takes an engagement ring out. But then she tells him that she went back to Gage, and he was like, no, you didn't. And she's like, yeah, I did. I missed him. Then he tells her that this whole story. This was the shocker for me, okay? When Ian was 16 years old, he was involved in a car crash that killed a girl. And yes, it was Gage's girl. Then he tells her that Gage is his brother. I go, what the fuck? I did not see that coming. I really didn't see that coming. So she leaves. She goes home. When she gets there, she hears a familiar voice. It's Rick. He's got a gun. She tells Eve to go in the room that she has a new toy for her on the bed because she's trying to get her kid out of here. So there's a knock on the door. It's Gage. He tells her, we aren't over. Otherwise, you wouldn't have come back. And so she tells him to leave again. So then Rick is like, I bet you so she finally gets Gage gone. So then Rick is all like, I bet you like being fucked by him. Did you let him fuck you in your ass? He's like, you're going to make up for 3 years of fucking. I was like, oh my gosh. So Rick puts a chair underneath the door of Eve's room so she can't get out to disturb the homecoming. Those were his words. So then he unzips his pants. He's about to get her, and then Gage kicks down the door. Him and Rick fight. Gage gets shot. 3 days pass. She hasn't gone back to the hospital. She's staying at a motel, and she is going to leave town. So Ian calls her, and she asks about Gage, if he's okay, if he's going to make it. Ian's like, yeah, he's going to make it. Ian was like, I want to see you before you leave. So Ian comes to the motel to see her. When he gets there, she asks him, can you watch Eve for an hour? And he knew where she was going. She was going to see Gage. This is crazy. Because she's fallen for him. Oh my gosh. But it's not her fault because no one told her what the fuck was going on. I feel like maybe she could have put some, I don't know. This is just also twisted. So she goes to see Gage. He's giving nurses hell. He sees her and he just stops. So we find out that he's under investigation. He told her he did take money, but he paid it back when the company was going through, when they were going through a recession. He had to do what he had to do, but he paid everyone back. But while he was taking, stuff was happening, that's when he found out that Jody was stealing money as well. So Rick's in jail. Jody was arrested as well. So then she tells him that she's leaving town. And she also asks, basically, did you come after me because of what happened to your girlfriend? And he was like, it started off that way, but that's not what it's about now. So then she tells him, you need to let that go. Like, you made me pay for his sins. Like, you need to let that shit go. So a year later, she's in Texas. She's a waitress. She's got a friend named Stacy. Stacy has I think a son, young son around the same age as Eve. So she's got a friend. She comes home, and guess who car is in the driveway? Good old Gage. And she invites him in, and he tells her he misses her. She admits, I miss you too. And he says, get a sitter for tonight. And he hands her the phone, and she starts to dial. And that is how book 1, The Devil's Kiss, ends. The next book in the series is The Devil's Claim. I think it's like 4 books in this series. I think 4. What did you guys think of The Devil's Kiss? I like this. It was a lot of twists. It's dark. I don't think it's as dark as our previous dark book. That was to me, that was a little darker. But this has a lot of twists and turns, and I love a good twist and turn. So let me know what you guys think in the comment section, in the discussion board. Thank you all so much for your support. As always, make sure you like and subscribe. And thank you for tuning in to the Always Reading Book Club.